This film was gripping and at times really hard to watch, other times really inspiring. Ron, I want to get your take on it because this format of documentary is not your normal genre. There's not a narrative that you knew beforehand. I read that you thought that you wanted to get, or you realized you wanted to do this as the fire was happening. Can you walk me through your thought process and just what it was like to dive into something where you had no idea what was going to happen?
Well, I mean, first of all, I've only in the last 5 years began working on documentaries while I'm still doing scripted narratives for movies or TV, and yet I haven't done a verite. They've been built around music and the Beatles and Pavarotti, and one we did with Jay-Z, and they've been fascinating to work on, and I've really enjoyed it. But they haven't been explorations, and they haven't been covering a story. And so in the wake of the car fire, which is what they call a devastating fire in Reading, I have relatives there, and my mother-in-law lived for the last 5 years of her life in Paradise, and so I'd been to Paradise many times. So the Reading fire was frightening. My family members, extended family members, were okay, but I knew that it was intense. The fires in California over a period of a couple of years, I had friends who lost homes in Santa Rosa, that kind of thing. Then it hit Paradise, and with such devastation. And my then longtime assistant, Louisa Velis, was saying, "This is unbelievable. It happened in Reading and now Paradise," And she literally said, "This could be an interesting story. How do you rebuild that? How do you rebuild Paradise?" And it did seem like a title, and it did seem like a really valid question, and certainly one that I felt a connection to. So I went to the documentary team at Imagine, led by Justin Wilkes and Sarah Bernstein, and I said, "I know I haven't done a verite doc, but how would you approach one like this?" And they said, "Well, first, it's a great story. Second, we send a team immediately. You go and begin exploring, and we'll find a partner." And that partner turned out to be Nat Geo. Mm. But the minute I got there, again, without knowing the story, you began to have a sense that there was this shock. I mean, as powerful as our images are, they don't even begin to really reflect or you can't really comprehend it unless you're standing there. And I'd never been around anything like that in my life. But you also did begin to see this sort of small group of people who were demonstrating a kind of resilience, even though they were still very much in shock, and then other people who were just checking out. And you began to see that there was a core group that had this desire. And the question was going to be, how far could that desire take them?
You mentioned not being able to understand what it's like unless you're there. And very few people are unlucky enough to live through a fire. And I say unlucky enough because it is a harrowing experience seeing the flames all around you. And in the beginning of this documentary, and I might get a little emotional, it's really hard to watch. Just watching and hearing the voices of people who were trying to escape it. And it's scary. I mean, it's scary in a way that you can't quite imitate. I know you did Backdraft.
I did.
As good as that was, I don't think you can quite capture the raw emotion and the terror that we felt, everybody, in that first few minutes of the documentary. Tell me about putting that together and why you decided to include that specifically.
Well, we weren't there for the fire, but the minute we got there and started to ask, we realized that not only had some professional photographers, gone out and captured some amazing footage. Not only was there some terrific news footage that we could license, but people were recording it, and we began to see what some of the body cams had done from the police and the police department, and began to understand that they had really been inside it and had recorded it. It's the most harrowing scene that I've ever been around. But I will tell you that in doing Backdraft, which was primarily real fire, controlled with gas and so forth, and still it got away from us a couple of times. Wow. When you begin to realize, when you start working with fire, that it is unbelievably dangerous and fast moving, and all the ideas that you might have about grabbing a few things and getting out when it comes, it's devastating and unpredictable. So I knew all of that, but as Gladys and Mickey, our two editors, really began to cull through that material for months, and people realized, we just sort of said, as I was interviewing people, I'd say, do you have footage? And they'd say yes. And as Zan and Liz, the producers, as they stayed around, they'd ask, and then they put it on Facebook, and this footage started coming to us, and I just realized that, these people are recovering. They look pretty normal. You need to understand what they've been through. And the more we saw this footage come together, we realized that it was just very important to create that context. And then I found places in the film to go back and just remind audiences of what they'd recently lived through. And cinematic decision, but the people made it possible because, they gave us the footage.
Michelle just joined us again. We had some technical difficulties with Michelle, so I'm glad we were able to figure them out. Michelle and Woody, you guys lived through this, and I know that Ron saw it through the footage. I saw it through the footage. Most of us experienced what you experienced in real life through news stories, and it's hard, I guess, in this day and age with all the tragedy that we encounter in our through the news, natural disasters and whatnot. It's hard to have something stick, and this is one of those stories that really stuck for a lot of people. Certainly for me. Michelle, what was it like, just I guess living through it?
It's like nothing you've ever experienced before, and it's like nothing you can ever prepare for, or nothing that you think will ever happen to you. And so when it does occur, you just have to keep moving. You can't stop. As the superintendent, I was, of course, concerned about 5,000 kids. Yeah. And you just cannot stop. You go into that mode that you've been taught your entire life on how to respond. You never think you're going to have a tragedy like this. My first call was to the fire chief, David Hawks, and I won't tell you what I said, but it was like, "Are you kidding me?" And he said, "Get the kids off the hill now."
Yeah.
And I said, "Okay, we're doing the best we can. We've got the buses going. We're moving."
And you were able to do it.
We were able to do it. We lost 17 vehicles and we lost 5 schools, but we did not lose a single student. We didn't know that for about 2 weeks. So it was a pretty panicked 2 weeks because all communications were down, but it was that was so heartwarming.
I don't want to focus too much on the fire because this documentary is about overcoming the fire, rebuilding after the fire, and both of you proved so resilient. I mean, Michelle with getting that graduation going, and Woody with rebuilding your home. Woody, are you in your new home?
Yeah, this is the dining room behind me. Yeah, we've been here since December 13th. It's so good to be home. We don't have any trees left. There's no shade. I don't have any neighbors. I got 2 new neighbors that are building back that are just showing up. But it's happening all over town. There are people rebuilding every facet of town, and It's really good. In the film, there's a part, and I think when Ron stopped by our property when we were digging the dirt, and then James Gallagher, one of our assemblymen, stopped by, and we had a conversation, and I heard it from one of the old timers here. I wasn't born and raised here, but I've been here a number of years, and an old timer, I heard him over say it, and I shared it with James. And that scene where he's at the committee meeting, and somebody there is talking about, well, why should we let them rebuild, blah blah blah, and he makes a point there. The people that are here, that stayed here, that came back as soon as the town opened back up, and the people that are coming back here are the people that want to be here. And that's how this community was founded over 100 years ago. It's people that wanted to be here, that chose to be here. And a whole bunch of us are sticking around.
So let's focus on that for a moment, because that is something that's brought up whenever there's fires in Malibu or there's a hurricane in Miami. Should we be rebuilding in places that are so vulnerable? And you're adamant, yes,
yeah.
we should.
Yeah. I mean, people have $1 million homes on the beaches of Florida that get wiped out by hurricanes every year. And insurance gives them money and they build them back. If it's your home, if it's where you feel safe, if it's where you have history and memories and generational things, I mean, no place can replace it, and no matter what the perils are, anybody that lives in California lives with the threat of earthquake.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? Move to Nevada or Oregon?
I'm so scared of earthquakes. I moved to New York.
I mean, it doesn't matter where you live. There's going to be the potential for natural disasters. And in today's world, there's potential for unnatural disasters no matter where you live.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there's everywhere you go now seems like there's some either man-made or natural threat hanging over your head. Michelle, I want to ask you about pulling off that graduation. What was that like?
The first time we came together as a community, I came at the Performing Arts Center in front of 1,000 people. And this was a few days after the fire. And I said, we will graduate on Amrath Field. And I remember walking off there going, oh my gosh, I have no idea I'm going to pull this off. What did I just say? But people needed to hear that. They needed hope. And so I wanted to give them hope. We jumped through hoop after hoop after hoop. There was a couple times I didn't think we were going to be able to do it. If it wasn't for some of our assemblymen and local people coming, Jim Brochures, our retired fire captain, they took down over $1 million worth of trees at the high school for nothing. So we could not have jumped through FEMA. The timeline was just too astronomical. So we had to work our way through porta potties and water bottles and you name it, we had to do it. And every time they threw an obstacle at us, I'd say, okay, guys, how are we gonna come around this? This is just way too important to the community and kids. So we did it.
I just want to add one thing to this, which is, I think, in following this story for a year, and we always kind of gave ourselves that time frame. This is what we have the resources to do, and this is what we'll do. The story didn't surprise me in very many ways. But there was one huge observation. To me, I never expected the movie would become an object lesson in actual problem solving.
Yeah.
Community problem solving. But it comes from the leadership of people actually setting goals and achieving them. And to me, that's what was inspiring, is people showing up for the Christmas tree lighting, showing up for memorials. And I also just want to say that Michelle's husband, Phil, who I had a chance to meet and spend some time with, was an important community leader. And, we didn't, outside of him sort of being in a costume and helping out at the parade, we didn't get on camera the kind of commitment that he made, in his own right, from the moment the fire, had happened. And a great guy. But another engine in terms of recovery. So things like Woody building a house, Michelle getting the graduation, these having the Christmas tree lights, man, that was the lesson to me, was that when people rally and say, we have a common goal now, let's do it in steps. Let's get together and organize and make things happen. And it's remarkable to see how they move the needle.
I think that's a really good point. And I wonder what sort of lessons the rest of us can take away from that, given that we're all living in a pandemic and everybody is being asked to make sacrifices, personal sacrifices, either stay home or wear masks, or maybe they've lost their jobs or they've lost loved ones. What Woody, can you say that you learned during the fire that translates to the moment we're living in now?
Well, government at every level is dysfunctional. I think what I learned in this, what we learned, I'm not sure about the COVID virus, other than I believe this could be applied even to that. What was really important for our community, like our football team, the graduation, Gold Nugget days. If you have traditions in your family, family unit or in your community, maintain them. If you got to do it by Zoom, if you got to do it with social distancing, maintain your traditions, because that's part of the fabric of what people, of the safety of what home is to people. It's community, it's family and traditions that you share. And so that would be, that's something we did here as a community, and it wasn't left up necessarily to our government. It was left up to our community, so I mean, in this environment, do what you got to do to be safe and to stay healthy, care about the other people. I think the film is, it's really important to me in the film the way it ended. And there's a young girl in high school that they're collecting money in a jar for Alabama. And she says, I used to see this on TV and think, oh, wow, that's too bad. But now I've lived through it. I understand what it feels like. I want to help. That's what it's about. That's what it's about. And I had some people that got the chance to see the film, and they criticized the ending of the film. They didn't understand it. They didn't get it. They didn't hear what that little girl said. If you've lived through it, and like you guys had mentioned earlier, that the first part of the film, I think it was really important. This is the 6th time I've seen the film, and I was in tears most of the afternoon, because it re-triggers how it felt to be in the middle of that inferno, hopeless, thinking you were going to die.
So well said. And I think you make such a good point about the end of it and the hope. And Michelle, I think same question to you. What do you think we can learn? And
I think what we've learned is don't be afraid to ask for help. People have a need to give. Don't be afraid to make phone calls. I became friends with the governor, became friends with the state superintendent, just because I didn't want to accept no on behalf of kids or our community members. So I kept making phone calls and just saying, we need help here. And when people would say something, I'd say, have you been here? Have you visited here? Because you had to really have been there to see the devastation of what we were living through, with no water and stopping to get bottled water, and then the fact that the resilience of people. So I was constantly asking for help in very positive ways, and people had a need to give to us. When we had technology issues, the State Department gave us $1 million to get our computers back up. And I was very, very thankful for anything that people gave. And so I would tell people, don't be afraid to ask for help, because people have a need to help each other. They want to help each other.
There was a bit of news that happened in the past couple of days about PG&E, and we mentioned it before we went live with this, which is that they were ordered to pay, I believe it's $3.5 million for basically wrongful death. Like they were responsible for the deaths in the campfire in Paradise. This is on top of the more than $1 billion settlement that they agreed to pay. Ron, what was it like as a filmmaker coming, I guess, learning about the way that the government, or not even the government, way that a public utility messed up and what it did to a town? How were you able to capture that? That's something that, journalism has to try and tackle every day. What was it like for you as a filmmaker?
I would say during the course of the year, it was recognized that PG&E, that there might be liability.
Yeah.
And that kept unfolding through the formal apology, and they began to suggest, admit wrongdoing there. But it was also unclear, even in that first year, quite what it was going to mean and how, and there was still a lot going on. It was important to myself and also to the producers, to Zan and Liz and Justin and Sarah, that it wasn't about, a gotcha uncovering the truth on some sort of journalistic level about PG&E. Again, it was much more about the people. What was most revealing, I thought, and by the way, I just recently read, I didn't know this, but Benjamin Franklin, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. That was actually about controlling fires.
Really?
Yes. There were fires in Philadelphia, and he was basically, that's what he was writing about when he came up with that one. But it's things like the controlled burn, the fact that the PG&E equipment was so old, and that wasn't cared for. So there was, as much as Paradise did know and did try to prepare and did quite a bit, and that saved them. I mean, this could have been even worse. I think everybody recognizes, as horrific as it was and as deadly as it was, it could have been worse. So the prevention accomplished a lot, but not as much as if everyone had really been saying, this is a real threat. Let's invest in the prevention. Let's commit to that as a community or as a society and a government. So to me, I think we wanted to underscore all the possibilities and all of the factors, because as many of the experts said, yes, the PG&E sparks, that's a terrible thing, and et cetera. But this was a sort of a perfect storm. And more, we're just finding that these perfect storms keep occurring.
Yeah, well, on that note, I mean, you glance over climate change for the end there when you do the headlines about the various natural disasters around the world. Why did you make the decision not to focus more on it?
Well, again, we were focusing on this town. As a director primarily of scripted narratives, I always kind of align a documentary with a similar movie or a play. And with the Beatles, weirdly enough, I thought of it as Das Boot, like they're in this submarine trying to get somewhere. Everything's going on out there. They don't know. All they have is each other. I'm a dramatic guy, so you can imagine. I didn't know what this was at first, of course, because we're just getting in there and exploring it. But it did, to me, begin to be the story of a town. I kept thinking it's kind of like our town. And so I really cared more about the characters that we were focusing in on, because I was looking more for relatability, not so much the specifics of this instance. And climate change, yes, that's a factor, but it's not a movie about climate change. I think climate change might have influenced this circumstances. Many people we interviewed, thought it was unusual that things were as dry as they were at that time, and that's far from typical, et cetera. But it's more about the way a community responds to a crisis, the way we as human beings respond to a crisis. That's what interested me more. And, how might we better cope, and so I was really interested in the fallout and that scramble and the interactions with government and with the community, and families.
Michelle and Woody, I want to get your feelings on PG&E. That was an emotional scene in the movie with the PG&E official personally apologizing. There was the big settlement. There's now the money that they've been ordered to pay and the responsibility that they're now taking. Do you feel, I guess, Woody, I'll start with you. How do you feel towards PG&E?
Yeah, pretty angry. The whole thing is a scam, I'm 75 years old. The way they've got that structured is maybe at the end of this year, I may get some money and I won't get any more money till next year and the year after. All of the insurance companies are going to get $11 billion, like as soon as they put the money up. The town of Paradise is going to get $230 million or something as soon as they put the money up. No stocks, and they're not going to wait for a payout 2 or 3 years. There are people across the street from my house right now living in a tent, and he just recently got a trailer. There are people displaced all over. They had no or little insurance, and they're depending on that settlement money in order to start living anywhere.
How populated is the town right now?
Pardon me?
How populated is the town right now?
There are about 2,000 or so homes that didn't burn. A lot of those people, some sold, some came back once we were allowed in town. We're probably at maybe about 4,000 right now.
And what was it before the fire?
It was 28,000 plus. Yeah.
Significant drop.
Yeah, and it's going to be a long time. The town's going to probably go broke way before the population and the business comes back, unfortunately. I just don't, how do you do it without property tax, without a hospital, without schools, whatever. So I'm angry at PG&E, but I will say that, I've had the opportunity, I had the current interim CEO of PG&E sat in my living room 4 days ago, and I got 1 hour to tell him all of the things I felt about PG&E and the mismanagement, because there's been mismanagement with every PG&E, the way they've handled their whole part of this deal. AT&T is on the hook. They don't want to bury the wires and take the poles down. It's all these people, and it's all money. It's all corporate. It's all, Wall Street stuff. And
So are you hopeful?
Pardon me?
Are you hopeful? It doesn't sound like you are.
Well, yeah, I don't need the money. I had insurance. So I'm hopeful, yes, that the poles will go away. I'm hopeful that we'll convince AT&T that no matter what you did, put those wires underground. I'm hopeful about a lot. I'm hopeful that the people that need that money will actually get the money, And I don't hope the town goes broke. I hope we survive. I'm going to live here the rest of my days, whether the town of Paradise is a municipality or we become part of Butte County once again. I'm still going to live here. But yeah, and I think things are better. I think that things are better, PG&E is, state of California's got problems. We got issues.
I think
it starts with leadership.
David, Michelle, we only have a minute left until we got to close this up, but I do want to get your thoughts on PG&E.
I was also able to talk to the president and the board and to the federal judge. They were in tears. They were very remorseful. It doesn't take away the fact that my dog died, that my mom at 86-year-old will never live alone again, that everything burnt down. It doesn't take away that they did not take care of their equipment, and that they totally ruined our town. They ruined our school district. They ruined everyone's lives. I've lived there. We lived there for over 30 years. We had friends forever. It will never, ever be the same. So part of me, I feel bad for them, but I don't feel bad that they didn't take care of what they needed to. It's like we all take care of our cars. We take care of what we need to, and they didn't do that. No amount of money, though, can replace what we've all lost. So it's not about money for me, except for the people that really need it. I also had insurance. The people who need it, my heart breaks for those people.
Right.
Their life will never be the same.
Before we go, I want to give you just the final word on this incredible film.
Well, thank you. First of all, I'm really eager to share it, and what I'm discovering is that in following the individual stories, that people do find their way into relating, and and I hope that more than anything, that the movie stirs a kind of an empathy and and a desire to try to follow Benjamin Franklin's advice, and understand what in their lives, what in their community, what in society can be prevented, and come together to start anticipating these things and solving the problems in advance. I think there's real urgency there if human beings decide, and there's tremendous capability, as we see in the film, if human beings decide.
Give us the Benjamin Franklin quote one more time.
Isn't it an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure?
Got it. An ounce of prevention, pound of cure. A perfect way to close things.
Yeah,
Ron
keep your gas tanks always full. Keep your gas tanks full. You never know when you got to escape.
Very
Cell phone
smart.
That's a big deal.
And if you're living in California, don't sleep with anything above your head.
There you go.
Woody, thank you very much for doing this with us, and congratulations on the home. Michelle, thank you as well. Congratulations on I believe your retirement and the graduation. I'm so sorry about your husband. I'm sorry we didn't get to ask about that. Ron, amazing film, and it's really important. I hope everyone takes a moment to watch it and comes away learning that we need to all be better, work harder. Prevention. Thank you guys so much. And on behalf of me, Katy Tur, Meet the Press, and AFI, we appreciate you joining this discussion, and we hope you enjoyed the film.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.